I'll go with thumbs up. Everybody good?
All right.
Okay. Right now we're on the scene of a fatal shooting. There have been two individuals who have been fatally shot inside the apartment building behind me here in Woodland Village. This apartment building is on Butternut Lane. And there has been a third person transported for treatment of a gunshot wound. And a fourth person who, again, there were four people inside the apartment at the time that this incident happened, right around 11 o'clock. That fourth person was able to make it out of the apartment and call 911, and we responded moments later after that. Where we are right now in our investigation is we are going around to different residents, knocking on doors of these apartments and the surrounding buildings, and making an effort to see what information they may be able to provide to us, asking them if they saw anything or heard anything. Another phase of our investigation that is ongoing, in addition to knocking on those doors, is there is a collection of potential evidence that is happening around the building by our crime scene investigators, and also they have obtained a search warrant to get inside formally into that apartment and begin collecting potential evidence inside. What we need from the public right now is we need some information and we need tips. If there is anyone who has any information about this, we would urge them to call Crime Stoppers at 1-888-CRIME-SC. They can share tips when they call that number anonymously. You don't have to give your name. Nobody will know where you're calling from. Nobody will have any personal information on you. And that's also in addition to the Crime Stoppers app, which is available for mobile phones, of course, mobile devices, and then also a website that is available from Crime Stoppers as well. So that is where our work in this investigation is right now. We are knocking on doors and right now waiting on tips and seeing what information we can get from those who were around or those who now have filtered back into the apartment complex. And we're collecting evidence, potential evidence inside. If anybody has any questions at this point, I'll be happy to answer what I can. There is a specific apartment we've been able to determine that based on what we've seen so far and based on the interviews that we've conducted here early on, is it happened inside one apartment. The way the story has unfolded is apparently the gunfire happened inside that apartment. Again, that's based on some preliminary information that we've obtained after an interview with the man who got out of the apartment during the incident and called 911. So at this time, it does appear to be isolated to one apartment. One of the other things that we want to make sure that the surrounding community is aware of is that we don't have any reason to believe, as we are in the early phases of this investigation, to believe that this was anything other than, we don't believe that it was a random act. Let me restate that for clarity. We don't have any reason to believe that this was a random act. So in other words, we believe that there was some sort of connection here between the shots, the person who shot, or the individuals who shot, because right now we don't know how many people were involved in this from a shots fired standpoint. And we believe at this point, again, that this was not a random act. In terms of our investigation moving forward, those tips, though, are going to be crucial. There are many more questions than answers that we have at this point, and a part of what we're doing right now is trying to find out if we can get more information as our work on the case continues. One person was transported from the scene for treatment of a gunshot wound. Well, the injuries right at the time of being transported were described to us as being serious. We may be able to provide an update at some point on the condition and the status of that individual. The two individuals who were fatally shot, along with the third who was transported, were in the apartment with a fourth individual who was able to get out and call 911, and we're still interviewing him to find out what information he can share with us that will be helpful as we move forward. We don't have anyone in custody at this point, and that's where the community tips will come in and be very handy and be very helpful to us. We really and truly believe that community tips are going to help us. We'll be able to chase down those leads. So we want everyone to understand there isn't any lead that's too small. There isn't any bit of information that will be insignificant to us on this. And that's why we're knocking on all of these doors, on all of these surrounding buildings, to see what we can find out by talking with those people, because the information from this building, a person there, combined with information from a person 2 buildings over, could work together very well for us and take us to a next step and a next phase in the investigation. It's too early for us to speculate on any sort of potential person of interest. At this point, we are still in the phase of trying to determine that and trying to see what information we can gather from those who live in the surrounding buildings.
Can you tell us anything about the victims, the 4 people that were in the house? Were they related? Were they friends? Do we know anything like that?
Don't know of any family relation, but there does appear, because again, we don't have any reason to believe this was a random incident. There does appear to be some sort of connection between the 4 individuals who were inside the apartment and some sort of connection between the individual or individuals, multiple, who came into the building and began shooting inside the apartment. So there, in terms of specifics, though, I don't have that at this time. What I can share with you, though, is that there was some sort of connection or relationship.
And going off of that, do we not know if there was 1 or more people involved in the actual shooting?
Too early for us to speculate on the number of people. It could be 1 individual who went in and began firing shots. It could be multiple people. It's simply too early for us to say on that, and we're not in a position where we can even speculate on that. Well, it's something that we're working off of in the early phases of our investigation, and we do need to protect some of that at this point. We've got some information that we're trying to track down, but just based on the initial information that we've gathered, interviewing the person who was able to get out of the apartment and call 911, and working on some other things and sharing those tips among ourselves as we have arrived here on scene and now begin fanning out across the complex, it just doesn't appear to be random. There appears to be a connection, and that's the assumption that we're working under right now as we continue our work.
Is the person who you were able to interview, who was able to get out, are they the main source of most of the information that you guys have at this point?
They are, and they're the main source. So the question about the individual being that single source, they are the primary source at this point, and that is why getting out and knocking on the doors has been so crucial, to try and get more information, and that information could lead into tips, which of course could lead us into formulating a full-blown lead where we can move forward.
At any point, is the apartment complex on lockdown?
I'm not aware of anything being on lockdown here at the apartment complex. There are a number of people who live in adjacent buildings who came out an hour or so after the incident unfolded and didn't know that anything had happened. So we are, again, working with them to share with them what has happened, and then they're working with us in sharing with us what they know and maybe what they've seen, not just this morning, but what they've seen in recent days at the apartment and around the specific building.
This is as far as a quiet complex, so I'm sure that a lot of people are not used to seeing incidents like this, you know, with law enforcement vehicles behind you, punching tape, victims.
Yeah, a number of the people who've stepped forward and come out after or in the immediate aftermath of today's incident seemed surprised about what was going on. And as we've knocked on some doors, we've gotten some similar responses. And so we're continuing to see what they know and how they can help us and share the information that we can. But we, again, want to underscore to them, we don't believe that anyone at any point was randomly selecting apartments to go inside and commit this act of violence. We believe that there was a connection between those who were inside and then those who went inside and shot, or the individual who did that.
Now, speaking about the apartments, do you think this had any history before? You all coming for different calls for whatever reason?
We have similar questions about activity at the apartment, and that'll be some of the things that we try to work to determine, and some of the things that we're going to take a look at and see if we can formulate a lead off that. But it's too early for us to speculate on what type of activity might have been happening here in recent days. But rest assured, that'll be a part of what our detectives take a look at as they move forward and see what they can try and formulate in terms of what happened here today and maybe even what led up to it. When it comes to the shots fired inside or related to this incident, it's too early for us to speculate. That will be what our crime scene investigators are taking a look at. It's very meticulous, step-by-step, and certainly very procedural work that goes on, and that's what they'll be looking at over the course of the afternoon as they get inside and take a look and see what they can piece together about the sequence of events.
Are there any other agencies assisting Lexington County?
Right now, I'm not aware of any assistance, but there are always these situations where once you realize you don't have a lot to go on, you turn to the community, number one, and then, of course, you turn simultaneously to other law enforcement agencies and see what information they might have and might be able to help. So in terms of on-scene response, I believe it's just us at this point, but in terms of information sharing moving forward, we'll certainly be reaching out to our other partners across the region.
And earlier we saw the canines out here as well, assisting. Just talk about that.
Well, the K-9 unit, we had one K-9 unit on scene here earlier, but it's very difficult because of the rain for a K-9 police dog to do what it is it's trained to do in terms of tracking. We did, however, bring one out here just to create a potential of seeing what could be found. I don't have any information on what they did find, but I do know that early on it just didn't make it wasn't very practical for us to bring K-9s to the scene because of the heavy rain conditions that were happening, especially at the time of the immediate response.
What are some things that the canine units would be looking for?
Well, the K-9 units will be trying to establish a track and see if we can find a direction of travel if somebody left on foot, but keep in mind if they left on in a car, that would really essentially turn into a dead end. So it's just an extra step that we take to again see if there's any sort of information that can be gleaned from a potential track or any other information that they can find. But primarily in this case, they'd be trying to see if somebody left on foot.
Now, are you looking into any surveillance footage? Is there any type of surveillance in this neighborhood? And then also in surrounding businesses close by, are you looking into any of that?
When it comes to surveillance video inside the complex, I'm not sure of what cameras or if any cameras are available. But we will be looking at those type things, and from any nearby businesses, that's also something that we would be looking at to see if we can piece together a sequence of events or get an image of a vehicle or an individual. That's helpful, and that's a part of what we'll be doing. And detectives, in addition to canvassing the neighborhood, will be looking for opportunities like that where they can potentially get some images and some video.
Any idea how soon you would maybe give a description of suspect or suspect?
We don't have one to give at this point, but when we do, we'll certainly share that with the community because that will be vital to getting those tips generated. And when we have some information to share like that, we'll do that because we believe that community tips are going to be key to giving us some leads and leading us in the direction of a potential suspect and a person of interest. Any others? Okay.
Have any other incidents like this in this area?
I don't have any specifics on a call history. What I can share with you for me personally is I've not been to this location for what I would call any sort of response that has been newsworthy to get you guys out here as a response. So I can just speak from my experience. I've not been to this, but in terms of any sort of documented call history, I don't have immediate access to that. But I've not been here. Okay, thanks, guys.